We'd be right on it, right there.
Where it's supposed to be.
This week on Kentucky Afield, the rollover sneak boat might have drifted into obscurity, but it's a very interesting and uniquely Kentucky way to hunt ducks. Next, bats are often out of sight and out of mind, but that's not the case for everybody. The department has a team of biologists who work hard to protect these vulnerable species.
There's another crevice right here that is completely packed.
Then, it's that time of year.
Listen to this fish ripping this drag.
The white bass are making their run. It's all next
Uh-oh, there we go.
on Kentucky Afield.
That's what we're here for. Such a pretty fish.
Beautiful.
This pond is plumb loaded with frogs.
They're everywhere in here. Yeah, this is a good fish right here. Really good fish.
Come here, girl. Yeah, boy. That's a big rabbit.
Nice job.
Yes! Yes! My first muskie. Mercy Leo!
Yeah, look, it's a keeper.
Here it goes! Boom!
Wow, that happened fast.
Hello, and welcome to Kentucky Afield. I'm your host, Chad Miles. Join us as we journey the Commonwealth in search of outdoor adventure. If you spent much time in a kayak, canoe, or a john boat, you know that keeping your weight in the center of the boat is very important. But that rule does not apply to a rowboat. Randy, I've heard a lot about these boats called a rollover boat,
Right.
but I never thought that I'd get an opportunity to see one in action.
You know, before World War II and right after the war, most of the duck hunting that I was aware of, you know, my father's era and all, they didn't hunt with decoys. They floated on the river and snuck up on ducks. And these were sort of the ultimate sneak boat for the Ohio River. It rolled on its side, and once it was rolled, it looked like a log floating down the river. It was especially effective in high water. You just kept it rolled over and floated along looking like a log, and the ducks weren't afraid of you when you rolled it back up, and then you'd shoot.
We'd be right on it, right
on
there.
where he's supposed to be. I got the first shot, and you got him when he's right out there.
So you don't roll the boat on its side until you physically see ducks, right?
Well, most of the time, if I got fast water, I keep it rolled over about halfway and just drift. But if it's a slow river, our river anymore is like a big lake. What I will do, I will row, and whoever's in the front of the boat will use a pair of binoculars, and when they see ducks, then I tend to back in, move to the back seat where I've got my wide paddle, and I usually have it stuck up in the gunnel, so it's real easy for me to get to, and once I roll the boat over, then I just gently paddle down on them, and you don't, part of this is about not being in a hurry, which I kind of like.
Yeah.
If there's a drift running in the river, if you paddle faster than the drift, you scare the duck.
You look unnatural, yeah.
So you want to look natural, and I like to get right out. If there's drift there, I like to be right in the drift. I like a bunch of junk around me.
Okay.
It's sort of like it hides you. And sounds is your enemy. I mean, a duck will hear you set your paddle in the bottom of the boat. So a lot of times I just release the paddle when I'm sculling on my last stroke, just let it go and worry about the duck.
Okay.
I think a lot of duck hunters don't understand how well ducks hear.
Yeah.
And they tried to build some of these boats out of aluminum, I was told, and they wouldn't work because of the sound of the waves hitting the boat.
You're telling me this is kind of unique to Kentucky.
As far as I know, most of these boats were built in the Louisville area. I also have had a lot of references to boats around in the Henderson, Owensboro area. There was boats in that area. Then there was some of them all the way down to Cairo. Now, whether they had builders down there or not, I don't know. The builders I know about were all from Louisville.
There's a simplicity to this that I'm a little bit shocked ever faded away. I'm shocked that more people don't look at this and go, wow, I don't need 15 decoys. I don't need to build an area. I'll just go get them wherever they're at.
You know, I think one of the reasons for that may be, and my sort of experience hunting ducks, my father and his cousin, and there was rollover boat hunters around. from about 1960 up through the mid-70s or so, there wasn't hardly anybody hunting ducks in this piece of the river. I hunted decoys and these old boats, and I knew every duck hunter in the river. I'd see somebody there, you know, you knew you were going to know them. So I think there was a generation in there that just wasn't hunting ducks as much and lost interest in it, and these things sort of faded into obscurity, and the people who made them, you know, to sell them, they died a long time ago.
The beautiful thing about this, you set in a blind, duck hunting, you see the same terrain all day long. In this situation, you're kind of exploring.
Well, and what's really funny, none of the wildlife on the bank is afraid of you.
Yeah.
There's one particular bank we roll over, and not this past year, the year before, we killed 4 coyotes off of that bank out of this boat with a shotgun in less than 15 yards. If the wind is right, they don't even look at the water. Squirrels don't look at the water. Turkeys don't look at the water. Nothing on the bank is afraid of you. It's really, really interesting.
Really incredible.
Deer aren't afraid of you. I mean, I roll up on them and holler at them.
The only camo that you really need is you need to have something on your head, and that's it, right?
That's it.
I mean, because everything else is being hidden by the
boat.
the
And
gunnel.
you really don't want camo because it doesn't look right. Everything that's in the river, notice the color of the river, the water, how it matches the outside of the boat.
Yeah.
My outfit's always sort of the same color.
At the angle that I was at, leaning completely on the left-hand side gunnel, the only way that a duck could have seen me, it had to already been in flight.
Correct.
Well, Randy, I have to say this experience has been a lot different than what I was expecting. And I can think of many hunting situations where using a rollover boat like this would be a great way to sneak in on some game.
Oh yeah, it works real well, and you can, squirrel hunting is big fun out of it.
I tell you what.
And I just enjoy the scenery, and I like watching wildlife too.
My next step is I think I'm gonna try to get out here in the boat with you at some point in time, maybe take some game.
That'd be good.
So my line is really getting twisted up, and what happens when I'm reeling it up real slow, when I drop it back down, I'm losing my feel because my line is spinning, and it'll make a big spin on there. The way to fix that, you take your bait off, and I'm gonna pull out about 10 or 15 feet of line and then open my bail. And we're gonna use the trolling motor or the big engine and go as slow as we can, and what we'll do is it'll let that line unspool. And what you'll get after you do that, you pull it through the water for a while, when you get your line back in, you won't be getting so many twists.
Well, that's pretty.
Yes, it is.
Once you get a little line off, you can just let it loose and it'll go out by itself. I do about half my spool there. Let about half of it off.
You can see that the water is just gonna pull that line right off there. There's no bait, there's nothing on the end of here. And you can see how that's just pulling it off.
And you've got to take the bait off, or all you'll do is twist it more.
So now I'm just pulling line that's nothing's on the end of it through the water. And I'm sure that end of that line is just sitting there twisting and twisting and twisting and twisting, and it'll pull itself straight. Once that happens, I won't have that problem. Now I'm gonna reel it in, retie my bait on there, and that should be a huge improvement. Before, when I had some slack in it, it would have a huge amount of twist. Now look at it. It's absolutely, completely limp. So we'll see, that should make a huge, huge difference. Bats are one of the most interesting mammals found here in the state of Kentucky. Let's head to Carter Caves and find out more. So Zach, we're here today at Carter Cave State Park, and you're here to do a bat survey.
Today we're going to go in and just get an idea of the population of bats that we have in this cave, and this is something we do about every other year, and we've done this for about the last 30 years now. So we've got a good trend to see what our bat population is doing with each species. That's become even more important now that we have white nose syndrome, which is a fungus that's impacting a lot of the bat population throughout the eastern U.S. We'll be able to tell what % decline that we're getting in our population by each species.
Because of white nose syndrome, there's a lot of precautions that you take when entering and exiting these type of caves, right?
Exactly. What we don't want to do is, in an effort to try to protect the bats, end up causing them more harm. So one of the things that we'll do today is we'll decontaminate every bit of equipment that goes into the cave. Before it enters into a vehicle, we'll wipe it all down with Clorox wipes. That'll kill the fungal spores that cause white nose syndrome. We'll change our clothes, and all these clothes will be decontaminated before they go into another cave later.
What other type of precautions do you have to take to handle bats, either for you and for the bats?
Well, there's a couple things. Number one, before you touch a bat or handle a bat, you need to have your pre-exposure rabies vaccination. So both me and Michaela, we've already had our vaccination, so we won't get rabies, which is pretty important to both of us. The other thing we're going to do is we'll be taking some swabs today that'll be used for a genetic study on white nose syndrome, so that we're not cross-contaminating between bats. We'll have on latex gloves, and we'll switch gloves before we handle each bat.
Okay.
So what we'll do at this point is we can have everybody shut their lights off for a second. And we'll use the UV light. So if it has white nose syndrome, there'll be this fluorescing orange lesions on its wings, which we're not seeing. That's a good thing. So this one, at least visually, looks relatively clean. But what we'll do, you can turn your lights back on. We'll have Michaela take a sterile swab and then be able to send that off for analysis.
As far as the wing spread goes, this would be bigger than a lot of our common birds we have, like a cardinal or whatever. This would be probably a little bigger.
The wingspan on them is a pretty good size. The interesting thing is, if you want to look at the mass of it, it weighs a little bit more than a nickel.
That entire bat, you're saying weighs a little bit more than a nickel?
Yeah, a nickel weighs a little bit over 5 grams, and right now this weighs about 6 grams.
And on an average night, how many bugs could this thing anticipate eating in a night?
Oh, hundreds. Okay. All right, let's move on. One little brown, 2 Indianas, plus 22, plus 26, plus 18, plus 17.
That's awesome. Look at that. There's another crevice right here that is completely packed with
Indiana bats.
Indiana bats.
75.
And they're all the way up through this crack, packed in there. I mean, there's probably well over 100 in here. Now check this cluster of bats here out. This is very typical. It looks like it's probably about 20 of them just stacked in there.
There's 65 in that little crack.
65 bats in this crack. Michaela, it's interesting. You go to school for environmental science, and there's a million things you can study, and it's up bats. What is it about bats that fascinated you?
So bats are really fascinating animals. They're not something that you get to see every day. You don't see them flying around outside during the middle of the day or in the summer. They're active at night. They hibernate in caves. They're the only mammal that has true flight. They also face a lot of challenges between white nose syndrome. Several of them in Kentucky are on the Federally Endangered Species Act. And so it's really important that we research these animals, we monitor them, and that's really just the combination of things that attracted me to study bats.
It's a really, really interesting environment when you get into a cave, but you know, for a young woman, it's kind of cold and it's damp, and you got these big spiders climbing around all over the place, and bats, they get this bad rap. You got this little rat-like creature with teeth and move around, and for you to go, you know what, that's me. That's what I want to be involved with. It's really interesting, and I'm sure that once you got involved in it, you never looked back and regretted a minute of it, I bet, have you?
Yeah, I mean, days like this and coming to get out here and survey bats in caves, that's really exciting for me, and I absolutely
yeah. I can
love
understand
it.
why you enjoy it, because this is just such a cool place to be in a cave. I mean, but we got to be careful to tell people you don't want to be going in and out of caves, and it can be really, really bad for these species, and some of which are endangered. It can be highly illegal as well, right?
Absolutely, and these are sensitive environments, especially in the wintertime when we have hibernating bats. You want to make sure that you have permission to go into any cave you're going into, and preferably in the summer.
A lot of the species you study even though we don't hunt and fish for these species throughout the state of Kentucky, they're indicator species of overall environmental health, right?
Right, absolutely. I mean, everything you see in here is part of a big puzzle that goes together. It's like that game Jenga that you play. You know, you can start removing one block here and there, but at some point, you remove too many blocks and the whole thing crumbles. Well, you may be focused on deer, turkey, and smallmouth, and those are wonderful things to go out and hunt and fish for, but they all work together. And when you start losing some species, you can have an impact that carries over to other species down the way.
Well, I appreciate the work that you're doing, and it's a great job you got. It's interesting work.
I agree. Let's go find the sun.
All right. Right now is the best time of year to chase white bass as they make the runs up the river. Let's go out with wildlife artist Rick Hill and try our luck. Let's go get them.
I'm ready.
You know, Rick, these are hallowed grounds when it comes to white bass. Generations and generations have fished.
Fishing in the old days. We've gone back in time.
Uh-oh.
There we go.
That's what we're here for.
That's a big female, looks like.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Now that is a nice white bass.
Yes.
That's why you come to Nolin River. You know,
Yes.
I've caught white bass out of 6, 7, 8 different waterways here in the state of Kentucky, and I do think that Nolin has the biggest.
Yes. Beautiful fish. Let's get her back in the water. There we go.
There we go. Listen to this fish ripping this drag.
Well, that's a good
Look,
thing.
look, there's 3 or 4 or 5 underneath it. Look, see them?
Yeah, you can really see them coming right up underneath them. That almost looks like a big gizzard shad.
It is a gizzard shad, because look at the tail. Those are big gizzard shad. That is so wild. I wonder why they're messing with the white bass so bad.
Well, God just knows why they're doing it.
But you're exactly right, those are gizzard shad.
Well, that is neat.
You know, Rick, one of the best things about this white bass run is that there is a lot of walk-in access on this Nolin River.
There is.
You know, we're at Broad Ford. You can park right there and traverse most of this area.
Right.
And you can also go down to Bacon Creek, and there's areas you can walk for
Right.
a long way and fish.
Right.
So it's great for walk-in angling.
Right. And you can take your pick. You want to fish in Hart County, or do you want to fish in Grayson County? Which side of the river you're on. Speaking of walking the river, as I told you before, Chad, you know, I used to walk this river a lot because I lived about a mile down the river in Hart County, on the Hart County side. I had a studio here for my artwork, mostly dealing with fish, but I had a lot of friends at Fish and Wildlife through the years before that doing artwork for them and showing them some of my new artwork. So I met several of the biologists. They needed a creel clerk down here in 1986. They called me up and asked me if I was interested to do it for a few months.
You were a creel clerk working right here.
Right here.
All those people who've ever had someone come up to them and they think, oh my gosh, this guy's Fish Wildlife going to check me for my license, and they just ask you questions like, hey, you have any luck today? What do you think about the number of fish you're allowed to keep? Or what do you think about, that's pretty much what you guys were doing, right?
Well, over our primary job, that was recording how long they fished, how many they've caught, how many they're keeping. I'd estimate or measure their fish and sometimes weigh them, but trying to get as much information from each angler as I could get.
Gotcha.
When the creel clerk job was up, they offered me a job as a fisheries tech. In fisheries, I worked for 8 years, and then I moved up to I&E, Information and Education section. My primary job was doing the covers of the magazine and Nature Notebook inside the magazine and anything else that was needed. I ended up designing many educational posters, including the Fishes of Kentucky, that we have available for anglers that shows all the common fish that you might catch when you're fishing here in Kentucky, and ecosystem paintings that were used for education. We called them the river continuum, and they were used in schools, and people put them in their offices, and kids put them in their rooms, and we're still getting requests for them, but some of them we're actually out of. And there was actually other states, surrounding states, that used them as well. But my primary job now is the covers. And I've been on the magazine staff and been their artist illustrator since 1994.
The magazine's been around longer than the TV show. It used to be called something different, didn't it?
Happy Hunting Ground.
So Rick, how do you come up with your content for a Kentucky Afield magazine cover? Because you know the season that you're painting, so that gives you a little bit of an idea.
I try to match it close to the feature article in the magazine, and I collaborate with the writers and our editor, but he gives me a lot of artistic license to help form how that's going to go.
Gotcha.
So I'm pretty happy about that.
That is really cool. It's amazing the career that you have had. I'll tell you what, Rick, just about 300 yards down the bank here, there's an area that gets kind of shallow. Let's go see what's down there. What do you think?
It's worth a try.
All right. Here we go. Got a small one here. Pretty fish. Check this joker out.
There you go, Chad. Maybe this is the spot.
There you go. That's exactly what you come here for.
Yep. Look.
Uh-oh.
Broke.
Yeah. You took the end out of the jig.
That was a real fish now. Walk just a little past you right here. I'm getting ready to catch one.
It's a decent fish here. Not quite like the last one. Still pretty good fish. Here we go. You know, you might wonder, how in the world does this river system sustain this many of these fish? You know, and the answer to that is, these fish spend most of the year out in the lake, but they have to spawn in moving water. So now, you think about how the size of that lake, and a vast majority of them are running up this river to spawn. That's why there's so many of them in here. When you say thousands, we're talking literally millions of these jokers up in here. So the competition for food is pretty fierce. Look at that little girl over there, has got one.
Wow, look at that.
Doesn't get any better than that.
That feels like a good one too.
That's your best one of the day right there for sure.
It's close.
Oh, look at this.
All right.
2 at a time.
That's the way to do it, isn't it?
That is the way to do it. My goodness, that's a good fish. Let's see what I got here now.
Wow.
That is a really, really good fish,
Yeah.
Rick.
She looks like she could have some eggs.
Look at that. I got a good one, and yours makes mine look pitiful.
No, but that's a good one.
Look how fat that one you got is.
I believe we could call that a double.
I'll tell you what, don't get any better than that right there, does it?
No, they're beautiful, aren't they?
Absolutely beautiful fish. Let's get them back.
Back in the river.
You know, right in the middle of this run, you look up and down the banks, there ain't a soul here anymore.
You know why? Because they've all caught their limits and gone home.
Too bad we didn't bring a stringer.
Yeah.
Well, hey, they'll be here next year.
Yeah, this is gonna make more white bass.
Yeah, there you go. Now let's check in and see who else has been out having fun in this week's Ones That Didn't Get Away. Jonah Hurst caught this nice largemouth bass while fishing in a private lake. This fish weighed over 5.5 pounds. Nice job. Tyson Wells had to get up early to catch this black crappie at Cave Run Lake. Congratulations. Here's a really nice archery bow kill taken on Fort Knox, Kentucky by Chad Armstrong of Vine Grove. Check out this beautiful Bath County gobbler taken by Greg Riley. Nice job. Here we have Marty McKenzie with a nice muskie that was caught and released in the Licking River. Congratulations. Here we have a really nice buck taken by Jeff Wallace. This deer was taken in Moorhead, Kentucky. Nice job. Check out this beautiful Licking River smallmouth caught by Gary McKenzie. Nice job. Eli Riley caught this nice catfish while fishing with his pawpaw David. Congratulations. Here's a really nice smallmouth bass taken in the Licking River by Dennis McKenzie. The fishing is already heating up here in the state of Kentucky. If you have questions about the fishing forecast or places to fish, get your questions ready for next week's live annual fishing call-in show. And remember, hunting and fishing on private property is a privilege. Always ask permission and thank the landowner. Until next week, I'm your host, Chad Miles, and I hope to see you in the woods or on the water.
Dear Mom, I know a secret. You're a kid too. Salado is open and open for fun. We can go see deer, wink at wildcats, and giggle at that big black bear. You know he's your favorite. There's enormous elk, awesome aquariums, and we can even take a picnic lunch. And if you're really good, I'll let you take me back again.
The Salado Wildlife Education Center in Frankfort. Come prowl a while.